Hey everyone, welcome to the Cloud Builders community. This is a community for learning and inspiration. Online events headed by the leading industry experts. Cloud Builder helps cloud practitioners solidify their enthusiasm and better their craft while bestowing the knowledge. My name is Victoria. I'm the senior security architect in the Microsoft, but you will know me as an MC Victoria, and I will be moderating this event. Get ready because our agenda is fully packed and we are going to listen to Volodymyr about the continuously implementing DevSecOps on AWS. And after the talk, we are going to have a quick QA session together with the Volodymyr. So stay tuned and prepare your questions, and don't forget to add them in the Slido so I could read and ask our dear speaker, so you will get the answers. And after that, we are going to have amazing fireside chat with the two amazing people, Matt Stratton and then later Chloé. So stay tuned and we are going to proceed with Volodymyr. So meet the Volodymyr, or should I say Voldemort, the one who should not be named. He is a DevOps engineering lead at Intellias with 8 years of the development experience, has successfully migrated, deployed and advised 15 projects in the areas of the healthcare, gambling, e-commerce, and the automotive industry, certified, safe, agile software developer. His keynote talk, continuously implementing DevSecOps in Amazon. Welcome, yours.
Thank you, Victoria, for such a warm welcome. I'm really excited, guys, for being here today with you. And I hope that you will like my talk. And of course, I'm waiting for the questions in the question session. I think we can proceed with the presentation. Small disclaimer. I'm not a native speaker, so please excuse my mistakes. And second, all information that I will be sharing with you is based on my experience and may vary from engineer to engineer. Very good? Great. Let's continue then. Last year was rich for security projects, and I have had the chance to work closely with some of those. During this session, we are going to talk about tools and approaches that I was using and which is recommended to use. So the first section, we'll talk about what exactly you need to secure. And the second one, it's the security of your CI, of our CI, from inside and from outside. The third one is implementing DevSecOps in AWS. We'll talk about what exactly we need to enable, what to configure to achieve a good security. This slide, on this slide, you can see the small points for each part of DevSecOps, and we need to focus exactly on the sec part. We'll be talking about threats, policies, identities, access control, and more. So let's proceed to the first section. What project aspects are most valuable for business? Before I reveal this priority list, let's review the recent attacks from hackers. I think everyone already heard about Colonial Pipeline. It's a US company that was attacked by hackers, and their company just stopped, and the gas station was almost empty, and people just don't know what to do, and they have to pay $5 million for hackers to just unblock them. As well as for Garmin, their data was fully encrypted, and Strava and the Garmin Connect was down, and they paid $10 million just to continue working. The other issues, attacks, is still in progress, and I think Apple won't pay hackers $50 million because Apple just skipped that, and Toshiba is still in progress. As you can see here, the most valuable is data. Yes, of course, it's something that you cannot reproduce. It's something that was not automatically generated. It's a databases, it's a general configuration of your project, of your data. It's a user personal information, user data, uploads, anything that was created after you launch your product. Because without that, you just nothing. Just imagine Facebook without people, just a brand new Facebook. No one will use it. The second one is API or cloud access. If you have your API publicly exposed, you need to make sure that it's well secured and you don't have any vulnerabilities in it, or it's just for some simple methods. Because otherwise, everyone will be trying to exploit you, to attack you, and you will be hacked. And of course, cloud access. I'm sure if your credentials will be leaked tomorrow, your cloud build will be for $100K for sure. And of course, the third one is source code. Source code itself is not so valuable because it's just code. It's just files. It's nothing without a good business, without a good marketing. And it could be valuable in case if you have some cutting edge or breakthrough solutions or algorithms, for example, like Google or Facebook, the one that they use for advertisement, those algorithms are really valuable. Otherwise, no. And also, I know people like simplify things and just commit secrets and access tokens directly to the code. And if your code leaked, they will get information to the first point and, of course, to the second point. Let's move on, guys. Let's finally talk about the security of your CI system and CI servers. There are a couple techniques and tools for different purposes. And first, it's the SAST. It's a white box testing. I think everyone familiar with the first one. It's a SonarQube. It's a static code analysis. It is really good for finding some issues in your code or for some technical debt. It has something like quality gate, and if you unmet it, the build will be failed, and you need to fix them or just skip them. I saw that. The second is Snyk. It's a good tool for vulnerabilities within the dependencies. Of course, it's free for outsource, but there's limitation for private repositories, and of course, there's lots of paid plans. But overall, this tool is really fancy and gives you a possibility to analyze your dependencies. And if you have some vulnerabilities within those dependencies or versions that you use, Snyk will immediately let you know and will offer you to fix them within the PR. It will automatically create it for you, and you can just easily... Oh. Sorry, I have some fake sounds. Sorry about that. So Snyk also could be integrated as well as SonarQube into the Amazon reports, such as Security Hub. About that, we will be talking a little bit later. Dust, it's a black box testing. It's based on tools like Zap. Zap is open source project developed by OWASP, and it can be easily integrated to your CI pipeline. What it does, it scans your application, which is already running. It does not have an access to your source code. It just trying to inject some code, make some SQL injection, or check if some endpoints are available, what is data available, and then generates your report with the list of the issues that it found. Of course, it can be easily integrated with a bash because it's just a bash script, or you can integrate it as a test as an integration test with the Cucumber. But for that, you need to run it headless on some server and then use the Zap API for execution. As I mentioned before, this tool also can be integrated as well as with just HTML publishing report or with the Amazon Security Hub. On this diagram, you can see the whole cycle of using these tools that I mentioned. On the first section, you can see the Snyk and SonarQube. It builds and tests. In the middle, you can see the deployment to the staging. It automatically deployment, so continuous deployment. Then we execute a WASP tests against the staging or testing environment, because for DOS testing, we need to have your environment already up and running. And once OWASP Zap hasn't found any issues, then your CI pipeline may proceed with the deployment, like continuous delivery to production, of course, with manual steps. These manual steps can be easily achieved with code deploy by SNS notification or simple email or SMS message to your phone. Let's talk about security of the pipeline. As always, we are trying to simplify things, and we are trying to connect some tools or allow access for companies like Platform9 or Spotlight, which usually ask for admin access to your infrastructure. But that is not always that we need to do, because sometimes companies are focusing on marketing instead of security. And if those companies will be hacked, it's the same like you was hacked. So you need to scope your credentials and permissions and allow only to services that this application asks, or just not to use those. If it's possible to use some simple Bash script or Python script, please use that instead of using some third parties. And also, if you remember Jenkins or something like that, everyone just set it up, install some plugins, and forgot about updates. And this point is really, really critical, because we have lots of cases when the Jenkins server was hacked through the outdated plugins. Also saw some like issues when the teams from one company just spin up one CI server and everyone use it. So it's like it's shared for everyone. Don't do that. And of course, secrets. I think everyone was trying to pull the secrets out from CI by just printing it out or pushing environment variable with secrets to some endpoint or something like that. And that's a security issue. And to avoid that, we need to be sure that our secrets are securely stored. For that, we have some tools like HashiCorp Vault, which is three-way handshake authorization, and Amazon Secrets. But Amazon Secrets has opposite sides, because you need to somehow authorize it in your CI system. And for that, you need the credentials. How to avoid that, we'll talk about later. And of course, for Kubernetes, we have Bitnami Secrets and other tools that reveal your secrets once the code is once code will be deployed to Kubernetes server. So while it executes in CI, it cannot be revealed. We also have a possibility to use remote runners within our CIs. I use that with the project, use GitLab runner. I just set up a runner on my infrastructure. Then using the native EAM support, all of these runner to spin instances and jobs within my infrastructure. And this gives me good possibility to avoid storing secrets in CI, because then I can authorize secret manager directly, or I can have a possibility to run it in separated VPC and only allow access to specific nodes. And for that, I don't need any Bastion server because everything is already in my infrastructure. The same as with Circle CI and with GitHub Actions. This CI system allows you to run runners within your infrastructure, and that's a good point. Of course, something could be better, and for that, I recommend to use GitOps approach, but that's applicable only for Kubernetes, of course. And GitOps approach gives you a possibility to have pool-based deployment strategy. What does that mean? It's when a code itself pulled by an agent which lives inside the Kubernetes cluster. So your CI system doesn't have direct access to your environment, to your cluster. It's completely separated, and if your CI system will be hacked, the attackers won't get anything from your infrastructure. Only they can have a code. And as we talked at the beginning, code is not something really. And of course, we have workflow tools, which also runs within your Kubernetes cluster. So you can implement a workflow, a pipeline, which will be executed within the pods. With that, you can run whatever you want. And of course, it's cost effective because you run, for example, 10 or 20 jobs within one instance, and you don't need to worry about the spinning new instances because Kubernetes will do that for you. There are also other tools like kubeflow, Apache Airflow, AWS Batch, AWS Lambda that could help you to achieve this security and serverless features. Let's finally switch to the AWS. I think this one will be more interesting because this information is based on the project that I recently accomplished. And I will be showing you what exactly my team was doing on that specific project. Let's quickly review the list of the Amazon services that Amazon offers for security. And the first one is Amazon Guard Duty. It's a threat detection service that continuously monitors for malicious activity. For example, if a user logged from another country or suspiciously quantity of instances was launched, and many more. Or for example, some instance was detected as hacked or something like that. All this information will be available within this service, and you will receive a notification of that. AWS Shield is basically the DDoS protection for your load balancer. WAF, it's a firewall. Inspector, it's a tool that you install directly to your EC2 instance. And this tool monitors and scans your instance for exposed ports, for the application that you installed, for the also for some vulnerabilities from inside of instance. This one is also useful if you don't have a possibility to control what exactly is installed or what was installed. Amazon Macie, it's a tool which automatically provides an inventory of Amazon buckets, and it's whether it's publicly available, encrypted, or unencrypted, or and then in result you will have a report with the report with the information about the private information or sensitive information. The other are more simple. It's KMS, IAM, Lambda, and CloudTrail. We'll talk about that in next slides. So once the customer reach us, they have really simple infrastructure. It was just auto scaling, few apps, and of course load balancer. And that was it, nothing else. And first that we noticed is that we have lots of unusual traffic, which comes not from people, but as we detected, it was from scrapers and from web crawlers. First thing that we done, it's enabled WAF and Shield. And after that, we noticed that the traffic goes down for 50%. And of course, auto-scaling just killed few nodes. And yeah, we saved money by enabling these services. Yes, of course, WAF costs some money, but it's really cheaper than few instances. Amazon Shield, it's free of charge, but if you use Shield Advance, it will cost you $3,000 per year, if I'm not mistaken. Next thing that we go forward with the access to the environment, because we don't know who exactly has an access. There were other engineers that worked on the company, and we introduced SSM. With the SSM, we can execute commands, we can install everything that we wanted, and we can use port forwarding and, of course, SSH. You can just attach this the session from the terminal or from the web, and you don't need to have any credentials. You need just to have an access to the Amazon management console, and of course, you need to have permissions to run the SSM. And I know many people that do automation with SSM, like provisioning instance from the scratch, and that's really cool. And of course, last sprint was only focused on security. The thing that we done, it's we enabled VPC flow logs, we enabled DNS flow logs, we enabled load balancer logs, and of course CloudTrail, and everything is were analyzed by Guard Duty service, and detections that it found also were sent to Security Hub. Also, we deployed AWS config rules. AWS config is basically a service that helps you to be compliant for example, HIPAA or some other compliances. For example, you can set rules that denied SSH for worldwide. You can set, for example, that it only could be allowed to your local network, or for example, deny RDP or deny public access for S3 bucket. You also can control EM roles and other stuff. It's really powerful thing, and I recommend everyone to use it. Unfortunately, to deploy custom rules, you have to use Lambda functions. But as you can see here, we have an example to Lambda Labs, AWS Labs with AWS config rules. It's easy to use, and could be easily changed. Also, we connected everything to Amazon Cloud Watch events, and the notification were sent through SNS as SMS messages, or to your any messages, for example, MS Teams or others. In result, we have lots of data within the Security Hub, and what we can do with that. Of course, there is strategy and anatomy of security information. We need to react and do some actions once we receive a notification. We can find it in a logs, or for example, in a CloudWatch alarms, or the same like Lambda. And once we identify from where it comes, we need to do some actions. We need to understand whether it's critical service, then we need to restart or delete user from where it, for example, it was done. The next thing we need to discover when it happened, who did it, and why it happened, and proceed with next step. Next, disable access keys, create a ticket for a fix, or automatically create a ticket, because Jira, as far as you know, is integrated with Amazon, and you can even in a few clicks integrate it and create the tickets within your Jira, or I think any other ticket system. And you need to log everything that was done, and then you will have this control loop with the fixing, detecting, analyzing, and fixing, and the circle. What risks we can have implementing this all things? And first, as I mentioned at the beginning, people like simplify things. And worst case scenario is when you are in a hurry and you need to deliver this right now, and you just self-review yourself, or you reviewed someone's pull request without actually checking the code. And with that, we have most of the troubles. The second one, we don't have any alerting system. We collect the data, we send it, but no one checked that. We just ignore it. And for that, we need to prioritize the alerts. We need to set the list of the most important tools, the most important things of aspects of our project. And of course, we can have warnings, but warnings, no one cares about warnings. And as well as no information about desired state, we just have okay and false, and what we need to achieve to make it okay again. So we need to describe each alert with some runbook or something like that. And of course, do not over-engineer, and do not reinvent the wheel. I think every idea is already developed, and everyone knows about something that may help you to develop this or to deliver this feature. And few things that you can do right now, if you already have an infrastructure, it's you can change the security controls. For example, you can change from full access. If you have some IAM roles with full access, you can change it to read only, and then once you see the errors, add more and more, unless you have really scoped IAM roles, as well as login and monitoring. I know that CloudTrail is enabled by default, but it doesn't save the information to the S3 bucket. It's mandatory to enable it. And of course, CloudWatch and config, it's something that will prevent you from doing some wrong things. And you need to be sure that you enable it and use it. And of course, it's continuous scanning for protections, guard duty, and the WAF and inspector. It's easy to implement, it's easy to add, and you can use it with every app, but with an application load balancer. And of course, whenever it's possible, use Lambda. Lambda is a powerful thing, and it's the way, it's the future, because serverless, it's something new. Thank you, guys, and I'm waiting for your questions.
Wow, thanks, Volodymyr. That was a great talk, and actually I have plenty questions, and I have some already in the queue. First of all, thanks for such great presentation. And what came to in my mind immediately when you started to talk about your own experience implementing the security in DevOps, I was like thinking about like, hey, what was like, the hardest thing in all of that implementation part when you were working?
The hardest thing in the implementation of this project, or in general?
Bringing the security in this project, well, what was like, what took the most time or got the biggest friction, if you see what I mean?
I'm really sorry, but the connection is a little bit dropping, and I cannot understand the question.
Okay, no worries. Can you share some biggest challenge when you implement the security inside? Like, what was the most complex? Like, was it scanning process implementation or fixing bugs and prioritizing them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. Of course, the biggest issue, not the issue, it's I think it's when you work with people and other developers and a team, and when you implement and change the way they work. For example, you say, okay, guys, you have this information here, and you have to follow it, and we change your way of work. For example, we implement some additional Git checks and change their workflow, and people always forgot how to follow it, and people just avoid or ignore it, and the security borders that you set just ignored, and your work also ignored, because of people who just doesn't like something new. And the hardest part is to change their mind and force them to use it. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah, I see what you mean. In my experience, I notice it as well that getting installed the new security tool is not the problem, but it's getting the habit not to ignore it for the people. It's the biggest challenge. Like, yeah, and you as well mentioned infrastructure as a code, and I see one of the questions what I spotted is about like, what is the benefit of using infrastructure as a code, for example, Terraform, comparing with the manual configuration of the infrastructure?
Could you please repeat the second part of the question, because it was a little bit shaking still?
Okay. Yeah, internet is not reliable in today's world. Okay.
Nowadays, yeah.
It's like you can't trust anyone, especially internet connection stability. I was wondering, like, the people who were watching the session, they asked, yes, infrastructure as a code. Infrastructure as a code. Why it is better for the security than just to configure manually, like you just go either via console or the portal in Amazon and you configure it.
Yeah, got your question. That's pretty simple. If you have everything in the code, yeah. By the way, question: do you hear me well without interactions?
Yes.
Great.
So it's
Okay.
someone on your side is listening you.
Yes. Yep. Let's start from the beginning. Of course, if everything in the code, you can easily reproduce it in case of disaster recovery. It's the first point. Second point, you can easily reproduce to other environments, for example, test, stage, production, etc. So it speed up your project, basically. And of course, once you have everything in the code, you can review it with your colleagues. You can run it through the checks. You can execute it before you apply. It gives you the possibility to check whether your code is valid or not, and if the infrastructure will be as you expecting. In case if you go just and configure everything just manually, then you will have something like configuration drift, and you will be the holder of this information. And if someone new comes to your project, it will take more like lots of time just to gain the same experience, the same knowledge as you have. And sometimes projects, or for example, just product, are migrating to other company, for example, in case of merge. And this migration will take years, months, sometimes year, because code wasn't made, because there wasn't code. There's not just code. It just was made manually. So don't be afraid of that. I think Terraform and CloudFormation is very, very popular thing, and it's really easy. There are lots of examples, lots of ready-to-use modules, and you can do half infrastructure. You can create it within 1 hour, and that's amazing.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And, human make mistakes. So let's automate everything,
Yes.
including infrastructure. Yeah, I got the one question for you. So I will just read it, okay? My question is, if we are working with the secrets in AWS, which tool is better? Vault, I guess it's about the HashiCorp Vault, or AWS Secrets Manager? When do you want to use each? Thank you.
They are both good tools, and I would prefer to use AWS Secret Manager because it natively supports within your infrastructure. It's a first point. And second point, you don't need to implement additional configurations. It's already done for you by Amazon, and you can integrate it to Python. You can integrate it to your CI pipeline if it's needed. It could be integrated to any service which runs in your Amazon services, but unfortunately, it's not yet implemented to use directly inside the Kubernetes. It's yet in a beta stage. In that case, Vault, HashiCorp Vault would be better, or other tools that I named. Yeah, but HashiCorp Vault, it's also a good tool because it's like cross-platform tool. You can integrate it everywhere, including bare metal, and it's really when you have multi-cloud or hybrid solutions, you can use one approach for all systems. But if you have on Amazon, I would go only with Amazon Secret Manager. I hope I answered to the question.
Thanks. And actually, I would agree with you. That makes sense. If you have something out of the box, why not to utilize it? Another question, like we spoke a lot about the CI/CD pipelines, and coming to the tooling side, which solution or which CI/CD pipeline you were using, like, and which one is better? So how do you choose the right one?
First of all, you need to understand the company way. Usually, I'm not choosing it it's company saying me which tool to use, for example, GitLab or GitHub Actions. But from my point of view, I like, of course, GitLab CI, because it's really, really feature rich, and they continuously release new features. And one cool thing, it's out of box. You can just enable it by the YAML file, which like lies together with your repository, as well as GitHub Actions. I also had a chance to work with it, and I really like it because it's really easy. It's the same as GitLab CI. It also works out of box, and it has lots of integrations. I like it. If we talk about Jenkins, it's really, really customizing tool. It's used on lots of projects, but I don't like it because all the time you are trying to work with it, it has its own way. You cannot just say that I know how it works. No, because someone made it. It's something like Python script, right? You wrote it and you know how it works. If other person use it, he needs to learn your script first, then it can change it. So I prefer
I see. Yeah.
GitLab CI.
Thanks. Yeah. Again, Volodymyr, very, very thanks for the presentation, but I will not leave you right now. I have a final question to you, the most tricky one. Indeed, you know me. So can you tell me about your funnest failure in your career, and what you have learned from it?
Oh, I have one, a really good one. I was working on some project, and I was assigned it to be on duty. And they were planning migration from one data center to other. And before the migration occurs, my task was to stop production application before that, like to gracefully shut down and etc. And there were 3 time zones: UK, Europe, and Ukraine. With each, it was like 2 hours and 1 hour's difference, and it was set for midnight. I was too tired at 10 p.m. and I set a cron job, which automatically stops the production service. And due to these time zones, I set to shut down it at 11 p.m. instead of midnight. And imagine situation: you sleep, and the support guys, like from the first level call you and tell them, "Oh, why the production is down?" Did you tell them, "I don't know, I'm sleeping"? So it basically my biggest failure. And what I learned from it, that if you have this big responsibility, do not rely on someone else. Do it by your own, and check twice before you do something.
I would say don't trust time zones, right? That's good.
Yes, well.
Yeah, it's a great story, and again, thanks for the sharing that story, and thanks for your presentation. And I guess I will let you go and enjoy the other part of the session, our event today. I hope you're going to stay, and I will see some questions now from you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. Yep. See you.
Okay, guys. I hope you have liked the presentation and you enjoy the event so far. And this is the right time, and to be fair, to say the huge thank you to the company who supported us and made this event possible. So it is a company, Intellias, who is a provider of the full cycle software development services with the offices in Kyiv, Lviv, Odessa, Kharkiv, Ivano-Frankivsk, and Krakow, and of course with the local presence in Berlin. Operating since 2002, Intellias has more than 18 years of the experience in helping leading European and North American technology companies to create their software products by assembling and managing world-class engineering teams in Eastern Europe. And now, by the way, they are hiring senior and middle DevOps engineers. All the details in the description below. Please don't miss it out, the opportunity. And let me switch my gears and introduce our first Fireside Chat guest, who is Matt Stratton. He is a staff developer advocate at Pulumi, founder and co-host of the popular Arrested DevOps podcast, and the global chair of the DevOps Days set of the conferences. Matt has over 20 years of the experience in IT operations and is sought-after speaker internationally, presenting at Agile, DevOps, and Cloud Engineering focusing events worldwide, demonstrating his keen insight into the changing landscape of technology. He lives in Chicago and has 3 awesome kids whom he loves just a little bit more than he loves Diet Coke. Matt is a keeper of the Vault leaderboard for the DevOps Party Games online game show. And by the way, Matt recently changed his license plate from DevOps to kubectl. Hey Matt, how are you?
That's how you know I've got my finger on the pulse of what's moving, because I changed the tags on the car. So I don't know what the next big thing is going to be, but hopefully it will fit on my license plate.
And by the way, I'm so happy that you have joined the Fireside, but I learned that you are the huge fan of Doctor Who, and I couldn't stand away, and I brought my friend together with me. You know that guy.
Excellent. Yes, absolutely. You consider cyber leader.
Yes, that's me today.
Did you see this one here? Yeah. So yeah.
Oh.
You are the cyber.
Now I start. Yeah, now I start to consider to get one of them as well. So,
yeah,
Matt, you know, I have so plenty questions to you, and we have so little time about. And what I want to do is to keep our conversation bit like with the humor sense, with the sarcasm, and I will. Since I brought my friend the Cyberman, I will play the bad one person, and I will continue to nag you. And the first what comes into my mind is, we talk a lot about the DevOps. We talk about the DevOps in the way that this is like the unicorns, rainbow, implement DevOps, and your company is going to be coolest, greatest, and you name it. But I want like to ask you, since you are doing a lot of events and you're in that environment, what is an ugly side of the DevOps?
I think there's a couple. One that comes to mind is thinking about this as being a thing that you can just implement with tooling, right? And as my friend Bridget Cromhout likes to say, containers won't fix your broken culture. So that's one of the dark sides, is just sort of thinking that this is something we're going to do purely with automation or with tooling. But another thing that happens when you are, maybe if you even are, quote, doing DevOps right, one of the dark sides can be kind of an abdication of responsibility, unless you're really thinking about that, right? Or even worse, this idea of, okay, well, everyone can do everything, so we need fewer people. So we're just going to give more responsibility to other people. And it's great to have responsibility and accountability, but not necessarily more work to have to do when you're already having plenty to do. So one of the dark sides of any type of collaboration thing is when it's not actually collaboration, but it's simply trying to do more with fewer people, but you still have just as much stuff to do. So that can be kind of a dangerous thing that can happen if it's not done with intentionality.
I see.
I think another one, and
go on.
I think
I will keep
you and I kind of talked about this a little bit. Yeah, I was going to say is when we think about the idea of shifting left, right? We talk a lot about that, especially when we think about DevSecOps. But when we talk about what we're really doing with this is saying we're bringing the work to the left, but not necessarily moving it to the people towards the left, right? So if we're saying we want to, like, let's even take the DevSecOps part. Let's even just think about testing, right? When we say we want to push testing to the left, that doesn't mean that we don't have people who are experts on what it means to test. It means we want to get them involved earlier, right? So the same thing with DevSecOps. If we're talking about, so I think that's one of the dark sides of that is that we move the work, but then what we think is what we're moving is rather than moving it left in the process, we're just moving it to other people's plates.
And it doesn't make easy when you see a lot of positions opened, like DevOps engineer, DevSecOps engineer. And from my personal perspective, DevOps and DevSecOps is kind of the culture. It's even not the framework. But now suddenly we see like, hey, DevOps engineer.
I have kind of come around on that a little bit. I used to get kind of on my high horse about it's not a title, it's whatever. And there's two things that were shared to me that really resonated. So one is Ian Coldwater has said before, the problem with when we all get on Twitter and be thought leaders and make fun of the title DevOps engineer, the only people who hear that are the people who have that title, and they didn't make that title up for themselves. So all we're doing there is othering people and making them feel bad. But then the other thing is, generally speaking, if you change your title from sysadmin to DevOps engineer, you're looking at a 20 to 30% pay bump. So I say go for it. Go get paid, right? I always look at those things as something that makes me think about what the culture is of the company, but I don't think it's something that, if you're a hiring manager, think about that. Think about what it says about your team. But if you have the title DevOps engineer or DevSecOps engineer, I'm here to tell you I love you and you are awesome. So, and I hope you're getting paid.
I guess maybe it's time to change the job, right? And
and we need a new title so we can argue about that title.
Yeah, should I become DevSecOps architect, god, wizard, or DevSecOps wizard? Yeah, that's how I can take it. Coming back to DevOps.
You need to be a principal.
I know
principal DevSecOps wizard.
Oh, principal DevSecOps wizard. Oh, you gave me a hint. That's going to be on my business card. I guess the C-level people are going to enjoy this. Yeah, and if we're getting back to the DevOps, we are in the middle of 21. So let me reformulate the question and say, DevOps is like more than 10 years here. And in your mind, what is the roadmap for the DevOps, this next year, on what we should pay attention, or finally it will become better and maybe finally we will see something better?
So that's interesting. I want to unpack a little bit of that question. I'm going to start with the second part where you said maybe it will finally get better. And this is one of the things that when you're in it, it's hard to see the difference. So I remember I had a customer that I had been working with for years on their kind of transformation work as they were adopting things. And I was leaving that role. So I wasn't going to be able to work with them anymore. It's kind of the last meeting I had with them. And they're like, Matt, they're like, I really wish we had gotten more done in the time that we had with you. And I said, are you kidding? Let me remind you of how things looked when we started on this 2 years ago. But when you're in it, and where the reason I bring that up is it feels like we aren't there, but oh my goodness, have things gotten so much better, right? So, but can they be even more better? Absolutely. So to go back to the actual question of what where do I see things going? I mean, if I really knew, I would be more than a principal DevOps, DevSecOps wizard. But I think we're going to see more thoughts around platform, around just continued work towards abstracting to the level, whether it's through, serverless is a place that this makes sense for some people. But when the more of a focus on the thing that we need to do, like, is it provide business value to your company that you have people that are super good at running your own Kubernetes cluster? Maybe not. So we see more of the commoditization but when you move things like that, it's not removing people because they have different value they can provide, even more value, right? So yes, maybe you aren't running your own K8s cluster on your own metal. Maybe you're using AKS or EKS or something like that. But that's operation skill is still a skill that your folks in that place are still helping. And I think we're going to see more of a move towards what I like to think about as cloud engineering, which is kind of what we were talking about in DevOps in the beginning, right? Which is not about just the automation, but about what does it mean to build, deploy, and manage applications that live in our cloud world today, whether you're the person that's primarily slinging the code, the person who's got the understanding of operational things, etc.
Yeah, and you opened that Pandora box. You mentioned the Kubernetes. So is it going to solve all the issues?
No. Kubernetes is great. Kubernetes will not solve all your problems. I have kind of a tongue-in-cheek talk I give where I supposedly take things that I say are myths that are actually really true and explain why they're untrue. And one of them is to say the myth that Kubernetes will not solve all your problems. And I say, well, of course it will, because first of all, it came from Google, and YAML shows your commitment to precision. So what we've all become is very good YAML engineers. That being said, Kubernetes, container orchestration in general, is a way of creating Kubernetes by itself is not a platform. So if you're just like, I'm going to rub some Kubernetes on this, what you've done is it's sort of like, now you have two problems, right? Because now you have to manage to that. And it's really what is the right thing. And that's the hardest part of any type of this work is, what solution is this providing to me? Kubernetes can provide a lot of solutions, and it can be a great building block for an even bigger platform. And there's a lot of amazing things that we're doing in that community. But just, I put it this way, like, you should not have a goal in your organization to install Kubernetes, because Kubernetes is not part of the mission of any government agency or enterprise or company that you work for. If you say, what is the point of what your organization does? None of it, unless you are part of the CNCF, unless you're a vendor, is to run Kubernetes. You know whose job it is to run Kubernetes is Amazon or Microsoft or Google or another cloud. That I'm not saying you shouldn't run your own, by the way, but understand why. Like, what is it providing for you?
And that opens another.
I'm not trying to talk trash about it.
Yeah, no, that's all talk is about the trashing.
Look at my license plate.
Come on.
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
of course.
Indeed. Yeah. And actually, yes. Sorry for your license plate, but I'm going to ask you, because I have seen another holy war. It's like, should we place the database even in the in the container and run it in the Kubernetes, or should not? So, what is your opinion on that?
Well, that's a big hefty. It depends, right? Because it depends on what are you doing with that. Like, stateless applications are great for containerized workloads. Stateful pieces are not. And that being said, what's running the data layer may be containerized, right? So the reason to shy away from anything stateful in in any type of a containerized world like that is that it's by nature ephemeral. So can you do it and actually do it well? Absolutely. Do people always remember all the things? And are you an expert in being able to do that? Yeah, maybe not so much. And then again, what are you getting from that? That's the thing. Is it because are you talking about putting your data layer into K8s because you have a mandate from your CTO that we are containerizing everything by the end of 2021? Because, by the way, people get those mandates. If you're doing it for that reason, you're probably not going to have a really good time because you're not getting any benefit. That's the other thing, too, because the other thing that can happen a lot, and this is a generalization about any type of square peg into a round hole, is can you do it? Yes, but are you even getting any benefit from doing it other than being able to tell your management that you did it? So I don't think it's a hard no, but why? Like, what's the real benefit you're going to get? Because also a lot of times you can do that, but then you're going to take away so much of the benefit of a workload like that, right? If you're like, okay, cool, so I can do this and I can put it in there, but it's always going to run on this same node, and it's only the replica set is one pod that cannot go away, and I'm going to do all this kind of stuff. Then you're like, well, why'd you put it in a container in the first place then, right? It's, yeah, that's sort of...
Because this is the newest hype. Let's containerize everything what is possible, right? It's like, my mom is running on container.
That's probably fine.
Like, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and it's amazing to look like on this type of the obsession. But I like that you're emphasizing the primary question. What I see sometimes people tend to forget, why, and if the answer is like because it's cool or because it's hype, like it used to be several years ago, the DevOps, and now like Kubernetes, then it's a wrong answer. Sorry. And that's as well. We had a pretty good discussion on the previous with the previous presenter about the infrastructure as a code, because it's clear in today's world we should use infrastructure as a code because you can't rely on the human. Humans are non-reliable, if I may be polite. So infrastructure as a code. And now we have these clouds, we have multi-clouds, and we have so many solutions like Terraform, IRM templates, CloudFormation, and then so on and so on. So is it that another hype, or how not to mess up and choose the correct one?
So I will put it this way, and I work for an infracode vendor, and I have in the past. I used to work for Chef, and this is what I used to tell people when I worked at Chef. And people would say, this is dating me a little bit, when they would say, should I use Chef or Puppet? And I would say, yes. I don't care. Do one. And I will, don't tell my boss. I will still probably tell you the same thing. I can tell you reasons why I think Pulumi has a lot of value to it, but the biggest competitor to any of this is what I would call Do Nothing Incorporated. Right? Which is, that's the thing. And the reason, like, so you talked about, like, you know, I mean, people can be fallible. People often are. The other thing is asking a highly skilled person to do a repetitive task introduces more error than sleep deprivation or inebriation. So what we're doing when we're talking about setting things up manually and requiring highly skilled engineers to go and click in the portal and do all these things by hand, it's not just that they're going to make mistakes because they're humans. That's fine. But they're going to make even more mistakes because, gosh darn it, we don't want to do that. That's the least thing that's interesting to us. And we're going to make more mistakes. And that's totally normal. That's not a thing to like hire away from differently or whatever. That's just a truth. Also, besides reducing human error or reducing the impact of human error, the reason for that infracode is powerful is repeatability, right? And scalability. Because even thinking in the cloud world we work in at the scale that a lot of us do, it's not even possible to do these things by hand. Because a deployment could take 3.5 weeks of clicking through the AWS console, right? You know, literally that long. So you can't even work at the scale that we talk about. One of the things that I think is important is when we talk about this idea of infrastructure as code, I've been thinking about a lot lately as we've been talking about infrastructure as code for a long time. But I kind of feel like what we've really been doing is not treating our infrastructure as code. We've been building infrastructure with code, which is good. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but And that's one of the things that's interesting to me about Pulumi. And I've only been at Pulumi for a couple months, if you don't know that, listen, people on the conference. So it's new to me, but what made me interested is there's capability of communicating with our infrastructure as an API, right? And actually, in order to do all the things, we have the ability to do all the things we used to do with all our great quote unquote infrastructure as code, with tests and pipelines and things like that. That's an amazing picture. I'm glad you found that. I'm very excited about that hat. We can actually talk about moving to the next level of treating it like an API, and then consuming it from all kinds of different ways, because our infrastructure doesn't live in a vacuum. The things it takes to run our application are more than even just the cloud resources. Maybe there's a PagerDuty rotation that has to be configured that goes along with that. Maybe you've got other places that there's all sorts of different services outside of just AWS or Azure or wherever that's happening, and being able to bring them all together as part of what it really means to run and deploy and manage your application is really, really key. So when you're thinking about what's the right thing, I mean, again, I will go and tell you there's only one wrong answer, which is don't do it. But what is what's to your topology from a team perspective? Where are your team's capabilities? So example, in something like Pulumi, you write Pulumi code in TypeScript or Golang or Python or C#, right? So if you already know those things, that's great. You don't have to go learn HCL or something like that. Or in the case of Chef, have to learn Ruby. But that might not apply to you, right? Or you may have a lot of rich Terraform experience on your team. So then, stick with that, or have a knowledge of where that goes. The biggest thing I would tell you is do something, but also do more than just use the tool. Bring the tool. The tool reinforces the way that you work, and truly treat it like code, right? You're not just writing a script. You're not just writing an automation, but actually follow all the great software development practices we know about and apply that to your infrastructure. And that's where you're going to get the best bang for your buck, and make sure you're picking something that lets you do that in that way.
Yeah, I see. Oh, Matt, the time is so fast running when I speak with you, and I wish we could have more time to spend together. But like I mentioned, I have my friend, and it's time for the final question from my friend. Tell us about your funnest failure in career and what you have learned from there.
So this is a little bit, I was thinking about this because I've got a couple that always come to mind. It's not a technical failure, but I was thinking about with the when you asked this question previously, it made me rethink of another one. So I was working for a financial institution, and we were doing an upgrade at a remote office downstate, and I was just sort of the remote support. And what I needed to do was just sort of check that everything went right. And it was supposed to happen at, say, like 2 p.m, on a Friday. And would have been no big deal. Well, everything kept getting delayed because they weren't ready. And it's getting to be, now it's about 4 o'clock. And my colleagues are all like, well, we're going to go to the pub. We're going to go to the bar. And I'm like, well, I'm sitting there, and I asked, they're like, oh, it's going to probably still be another hour or two. So I'm like, they said it's going to be about another hour till we need you. So I'm like, cool. Bar is around the corner. I'm just going to go over with everybody, sit there. They're going to page me when it's time for me to get back on the console. Well, of course, it continues to get delayed and delayed. Hours and hours go by. You can imagine what happens. You sit in a bar for hours and hours. And then finally, now it's 10 p.m., and it's time for me to do my work, which is not a big deal. I'm like, I go back to the office, and it would be just fine if everything worked. But now we're having a failure on the storage, on the SAN controller, and all these other things. And I am in a position where now I'm like, I actually have to use my brain, which has spent the last 5 or 6 hours being pickled by spirits. And we got through it, but what it taught me, if I have to have a learning, it's if you are on the hook for something like that. First of all, I used to always believe you had to be available when you were on call, but it definitely didn't mean you had to be sober. And I've had more than enough times when I've gotten paged when I wasn't sober, and it was very frustrating to not be able to actually use my brain that is sometimes useful. So just because you don't think you're going to get called, make sure that you've got yourself in a position to be able to do the thing that you need to do. And also the other lesson is just one is never just one.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Oh, I can correlate with that. Oh, gosh. Again, Matt, I wish we would have more time, and it was a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for being here and sharing all these amazing information and that funny story. I enjoyed that. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. Absolutely. This has been great, and we'll do some more fun stuff. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the event.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, folks, and if you have enjoyed the session with Matt and you felt that it's not enough, you always can find him on his podcasted DevOps, where you will learn a bit more of the insights of the DevOps. And now it's time to continue, and we have another great guest today. Our expert is Chloé Messdaghi. So she's a growth strategy consultant at Standout in tech. Chloé is an award-winning change maker who is innovating tech and information security today and tomorrow's demand. For over 10 years, she has accelerated startups through the solutions that empower organizations and people to stand out from the tech crowd. Chloé is an international keynote speaker at major information security and tech conferences and events, and serves as a trusted source for the national and sector reporters and editors such as Forbes and Business Insider. Let me welcome the Chloé, and remember, don't put her on the choice between her dogs and the Little Prince books collections. Hey, Chloé, how is it going?
Hi, Victoria. How are you?
Thanks, and good. I'm so happy to see you, and I know you're pretty busy and you have a tough schedule, and that's why I really appreciate that you found the time to join us, and I'm so happy, to see you. And actually, that keeps me I'm getting curious. You're driving so many initiatives. You're doing so much in the tech world, and I was wondering, how did you become so passionate, and how did you find that spark? What triggered you to do all that? What you're doing?
I think ever since I was little, I've always been wanting to make a difference in my life, and so I think since I was 5, if I saw something wrong, I would do something. I would take an action, and I've always been that way. I cannot just kind of sit there and not do something where I see something that's injustice or inhumane. I have to get involved. I have to find out how I can help in many ways, and so I think I bring that same spirit in a sense, to InfoSec, where I'm just looking at this, oh, we have some human rights issues here. First, we need hackers to have rights around the world because we're protecting and serving the world, but yet we have no protections for ourselves. So that's one. The other thing is that I remember entering InfoSec and feeling like I stepped into the 1940s in a sense where gender equality is not there at all. You walk in an office and it's all white men, and you're just how is this the future? How is this in the 2020? I don't understand this. And so those have been basically my passions in a sense where we're trying to push for a change. And it's not just in InfoSec, we also see this in tech as well.
Indeed, and that's a challenging world. I can tell from my experience, working in this field, you are you're challenged by all that environment, and that's one side of that career path. Another is that you keep constantly, or you're pushed constantly to learn and educate yourself in the cybersecurity world, in the tech world, to stay up to date. And it's so overwhelming. So it brings the question for the newcomers. If I would ask you, what type of the books are suggestible, like, or is there any specific book what you could suggest for the people who are interested in the cybersecurity, which may help them to open that small door or the big door to that fantastic world?
Yeah, I would say like the book that I recommend for even if you're in information security, you've been in here for a while, is Tribe of Hackers. There's actually like a series. So you can read the first book to kind of get an idea of what kind of role you want to do when entering. And of course, this is more on the technical side. If you're looking for something that isn't too technical and you're looking for like a role like like marketing or sales, there are certainly other books out there. There's a book that's being launched in the end of this year called 97 Things I Wish I Knew About Cybersecurity. And that's going to be coming out soon. And that's another really good book to read, no matter what title you're going after for whatever position you want or you have. It is a really good book with all these like well-known people within InfoSec just sharing a bunch of advice.
That's a good suggestion. Actually, I haven't heard about that the later book, so I guess I will Google it and will order it as well, because I'm as well the huge bookworm and I love books. It's amazing. Luckily, in today's world, we have a Kindle and all that stuff, so finally my bookshelf is more empty than it used to be. Working for this fast changing world, and especially under the high pressure, there is another dark side, being like, in the cybersecurity, which is pretty common, and this is what is called burnout. And I have seen this as a common thing across the security experts. I have experienced that by myself. I know you have went through the burnout. So I was wondering if there is something what you could share from your experience, and can give the tips and tricks, and as well cover how it impacts the security in overall, like, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I would say that burnout exists across all industries. The unfortunate bit, though, is that if you're on a security team, you already are required to work more hours than anyone else. In a sense that you need to be available around the clock 24/7. That means if I call you at 2 in the morning, you're not going to be complaining that I called you at 2 in the morning. You're going to get on your computer no matter what. So the thing is that how our corporate structure is in every single company is that security teams are kind of like that forgotten team, but they only respect you when they need you kind of thing, because they're just hoping you're running the ship for them. But the thing is that they're also requiring you to work at all hours. And this is something that triggers the burnout, because you never know when there's going to be a breach. You are always given more and more stuff that you need to prioritize. And this gets to a point where it becomes so overwhelming because there isn't too many jobs out there in the world where you have to be on demand 24/7. That means there is no real balance of work and personal life, because the thing is, at the end of the day, you're going to be contacted at all hours. And so the thing to understand is that burnout happens when we're not balancing our personal life and our work life. And so in security, we're already at this flaming point no matter what, because there is no work and life balance in security, because that's how the role is created. That's how our industry has run for the longest time. So if we're going to fix that, we actually have to look at our industry and improve that. But one of the ways that you can tell whether or not you are burned out, there's some simple ones. One is, how long does it take for you to get through projects? In a sense, like if it used to take me 2 minutes to do a quick response email, but now it's taking me 10 minutes, hours, a day or so. That's letting me know I'm burned out, because I don't have that adrenaline anymore. It's just this feeling of being like that you don't have any more battery power in you, like you're running on like 10% of your battery, and no matter how much sleep that you get, it just never feels like enough. It's this constantly feeling exhaustion. And the problem is that a lot of people get stress and burnout mixed up. The difference between stress and burnout, one should always think of is, for example, if I'm stressed out and I have a glass of wine, I'm going to feel a little bit better. If I'm burned out, I could drink all the wine in the world. It's not going to make me feel better. And that's letting you know there's a huge difference. When we have stress that's built on top of one another and just keeps going, that becomes burnout. It's untreated stress. So you haven't figured out a way to reduce the stress, or you're overcommitted on projects. So if you want to avoid being burned out, the things to know is to have self-awareness. You have to be aware of how you're feeling. And it's really hard sometimes to do that because we're always distracting ourselves. Think about it. When we're on social media, we're distracting ourselves. When we're watching the news, we're distracting ourselves. When we're playing video games, we're distracting ourselves. When we're watching movies, we're distracting ourselves. We're always distracting ourselves, even when we're working. So we don't really know what's going on internally with us. So there'll be times where like you might be a little bit more sad than usual, or you might be more angry than usual. Like little things can just irritate you, or you feel empty, or you feel trapped. And that in itself is acknowledging that. And to be able to do that, sometimes it has a lot to do with keeping tabs on yourself. So journaling once a week or more than once a week is a good idea. And look for words such as trapped or empty, feeling overwhelmed, because if those keep showing up in your previous entries, that's letting you know you have a problem that needs to be fixed. And unfortunately, there is no magical cure for burnout. But definitely getting sleep, reducing your intake of alcohol and recreational drugs is going to help you out, because when you are drinking, you're actually putting yourself in a worse situation the next day. You're not going to feel as happy because now you're feeling a little bit more on the depressive side. So it's really important to be aware of what you're doing to yourself as well. But the thing is that if you want to heal from burnout, there's only one way how to do that, and it's taking time off. And that means taking time off of all devices, social media. Just go completely 1 week without anything. That's how you heal from burnout. But preventative-wise is being aware and being conscious about what you're doing in the moment. Is this job helping you? Is it making you feel worse? Because I know a paycheck is one thing to think about, but let's also consider your own health and sanity too. So if you have an employer that doesn't really care about that work-life balance, it might be a time to look elsewhere.
Indeed. I remember for me, what helped, like you're saying, is to just step away. I know sometimes, like you say, the paycheck in short term may sound terrible that you're not getting that, but in long term, you need to think the life is marathon, not the sprint, right? So
Yeah.
I stepped away for the few months. And the physical activities like, running, the weight training, cold shower, fully switching the context, doing my old hobbies, that helped me a lot. And I got back and I was like, no, I still love my security. I want to do a lot of more nice stuff, but this time quite carefully. And speaking about a lot of the stuff, there are so many activities what you are doing, and I wish we could discuss all of them, but may I spot the some of them? Like one of them, what I noticed is that you are driving the thing what is called, and you already mentioned, hacking is not the crime. Can you briefly describe what it is, so our attendees maybe would be glad to join?
Yeah, so hacking is not a crime is basically a grassroots movement to try to get rights around the world for hackers, because we've gotten to that point where it's like, okay, we're serving protecting you, we're disclosing vulnerabilities, and we're putting our lives on the line. And so it's about time that we start have recognized for that. So one of the things that we're trying to do the most is changing the way that people see us. So challenging socially constructed beliefs. And socially constructed beliefs are the things that you basically believe how the world works and it functions, including the people that live within it. And this is basically stereotypes too. So the thing is that a lot of times people don't know that there's a difference between a hacker and attacker. And so we're trying to showcase that and let people know there's a difference of these two parties. Because by showing that there's two different parties, this gives us a higher chance of getting legislation basically that will help and protect and serve us at the end of the day, but also get organizations to have vulnerability disclosure policies, so then we can work with them and feel like there's some trust here and that there's a bridge here that we feel comfortable walking on.
Yeah, that's amazing movement, I would say, because I'm getting tired sometimes with everyone who is evil, or even the script kiddie gets called the hacker. Come on, seriously. And
Yeah.
again, like, you spend a lot of the time on this initiative, and now the few weeks ago there was I had the pleasure to be as a speaker for the RSA conference, and I spotted that you were there too. And I guess, was it RSA conference where you announced another project which is called, if I'm not wrong, We Open Tech, right?
Yeah, so We Open Tech is basically a community that's for marginalized genders that work in tech and security. Basically, we provide support, resources, training, workshops to make sure that every single marginalized gender has an equal chance of getting the job that they've always wanted. And that also means working with organizations that want to do better, to provide more opportunities for marginalized genders and want to actually bring about a change to see actual gender equality. So that's basically what our community is, and anyone can join it, even allies can, by just going to the website.
That's a good call for the action for our attendees, and that's great. Thanks for sharing. And I already established the tradition here by asking every speaker the toughest question what I have in my mind, and it is about the funnest failure in your career. Do you remember some? And could you share what was your funnest?
Yeah, I would say
pick up
there's
one.
Definitely
tell
plenty.
about it.
Okay. All right. So I'll pick one that is not really security related, because I'm assuming a lot of people have had security related ones. So there was this time. Yeah. There was this time where there was this person who wanted to write a blog about my path going into security. And I was very, I was like, sure, I'll do this for you. So this person interviewed me and then came out with a blog and took my words and twisted it and put in things that weren't true in it. And which I was like, wait, that's not what I said. You took this out of context. And that was the hardest moment, I would say. That was definitely a failure in learning experience, is that when you're talking to the press, always record your sessions, because they'll take it and then they'll make it their own way. And you see this happen quite a bit. And it was a real learning lesson in a sense, because it put myself at a legal risk at some point, because they put me into they made up some sort of story which wasn't what I said at all, and that was terrible. But yeah, that's one thing I would say is everyone, if there's ever someone who wants to do a blog or is a reporter, make sure you record the conversation. It's really important because it will help you out to showcase that they did something wrong or took something out of context.
Yeah, isn't that simply to say don't trust the press at all? It's
yeah.
It's avoid them at all costs. Those are the evil guys, not the attackers. Yeah, that's great.
Get the language right.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, Chloé, it was a pleasure to have you today, and thanks again for finding the spot in your busy schedule. And so for all the attendees, if you want to contribute or learn something more, just join to some of the initiatives driven by Chloé, and I think you will learn a lot and you will be able to contribute as well. Thanks, and Chloé, I wish you the nice day. I guess it's a day right now.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Victoria. This was fun.
Great. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks to all attendees, organizers, and of course, Intellias. Also, we want to know your feedback because it's really important for us. Don't forget to subscribe on the YouTube and give a likes. And for the feedback, you will find the link in the chat where you can share all of your experience. So our next build-up will be better, more fun for you. See you soon, Cloud Builders.